Hey, my name's Jared Atol. I'm a audio engineer here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been working with this church called Zeal here in Nashville, and we're kind of talking about building out a template for your online stream, where you've come to the hardest video in the series, talking about compression. It's a difficult subject. It's so deep, and honestly, throughout my career, my relationship and my ears have changed with compression over and over and over again. It's a broad topic. I'm just kind of going to be scratching the surface because there's plenty of videos out there on compression, and honestly, it takes a long time to really be able to hear it in a subtle way. And not really going over that. I just kind of want to talk about the tools that I typically use and what cues me into why I'm using some of those. So I kind of loaded up. Drums is just the easiest thing to try to illustrate some compression on. So I loaded up a bunch of different typical tools that I use, and we're just going to kind of go through and just listen to the different things that they do. They're not gain matched or anything else, and it's going to be extreme settings. I just want you to hear the character of these compressors. So this first one's an 1176, super common. We're going to maybe do this here. Yeah, and we're kind of going fastest to slowest here as far as attack times go and grabbiness goes. Here's like a LA3A. And here's a Fairchild. Here's a Xynor limiter. LA2A. This is a DBX 160. This is a channel strip, just the compressor on this channel strip. And here's a Distressor. This Distressor is wide open, as in the slowest attack. We're going to use this Distressor. It's kind of the Swiss Army knife of compression, and this just can like really illustrate like what I'm talking about here, because this can be the slowest. This is like 30 milliseconds attack, so that's like really slow, and this is like in the microsecond area. I can't remember how fast it goes, maybe like, I don't know, 400 microseconds or something. This 1176, you hear a lot of people talk about this compressor as like a really aggressive, really fast compressor, and it's just talking about this attack time, like where we're talking about milliseconds on this slow. This even the slowest attack time on this is still in the microsecond, so it's really fast, and the release is really fast. So it creates a sound that's like really aggressive because the compression is just like grabbing fast, and it's like a solid state. All of these like characteristics that a compressor imparts on the sound is also a part of the dynamic range reduction. Like we're not just talking about dynamics, we're talking about the sound that these things can impart as well. And getting used to these things, honestly, the best thing you can do is read the manuals on all of these and put them on everything, and just try to break them and try to use them and try to see what you can get away from and what kind of it gives to the sound. And then you can kind of catalog those things, and you'll come back to it, be like, oh, I kind of like what the 1176 did to my snare sound or whatever. And you're just trying to memorize what the feelings it gives you and what they accomplish and everything else like that, and just pick one compressor and just try to use it on everything, and start to recognize where it works, where it doesn't work, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and it's just a process to get there. But this is a great compressor that, you know, I've got a bunch of different ratios. I've got a really broad attack time on this. And the biggest thing is on compression, if you go with the slowest attack time and the fastest release time, that's a pretty transparent setting, more transparent than a really fast attack time. And you'll really hear compressors working if you're doing a really fast attack time, and really easy to overcompress and overdo it when you're talking about fast attack times. And then the release time, the fastest, it's recovering back to the original sound the fastest. If you slow this down, it's going to stay in compression for a long time. So some basic general theories with compression is if you want something to be forward in your face and feel like it's close, you want a really slow attack time. And if you want things to be pushed back away from you, you do a really fast attack time. So let's just listen to what that does to the drums. This is a really slow attack time, and then as I roll it this way, we're going to really fast. So you can see how the drums feel here and then feel here. We would call this super slow attack time punchy. It's punchier. You can like really feel the impact. And as I take it here, it's taking that impact away. Now, one thing it does do is when I'm here, it kind of gives me like this extension on the back end of it. So it's taking all the front end away, but it's giving me this like explosiveness on the back end. And that can be exciting in a way. And we can utilize that to our advantage. But that's something I'm just like cataloging. I'm like, oh, okay, that's really interesting if I take that away. And yeah, these parameters also, like, we'll kind of, as we go, I'll talk about like what these parameters are doing and when I'm utilizing them. It's just, I'm not trying to do like a review of the Distressor or anything else like that, but there are parameters on different compressors that like help me accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish. And we'll go over that when I'm using it. The other thing I want to talk about is parallel compression. We're just going to kind of scratch the surface on that today. A lot of times you'll see this mix knob built into plugins, and that's like a parallel compressor. I typically don't like using dry wet knobs. I like to do like parallel, I don't know, let's call it the old school way. I'm putting it on a totally separate channel and I'm blending that in. That's why I have a fader is basically my dry wet knob, and then I really like leaving my drum bus like completely untainted. Like I want it to be as transparent as possible, and then I'll blend in the other things that I need as I go. So you'll see me kind of setting that up here. Yeah, and then what I'm trying to do with compression, like what I'm trying to accomplish in this live setting especially, is I'm trying to kind of start to limit my dynamic range. So dynamic range would be like my quietest moments are here, my loudest moments are here, like all this space in between, that's my dynamic range. So I'm really trying to do this with it, just make it more consistent. I'm trying to even out performances sometimes, you know, in the heat of the moment, maybe a drummer's not hitting that snare drum the same like velocity every single time, and I'm trying to just even that out so it's not like I have a really loud snare drum and then a really quiet snare drum. And then I do want dynamic, so I'm not just trying to make everything a block of cheese, but I am trying to just do some thoughtful ways to make my life easier, and then also add some energy, you know, like if you hear it on this, like this sounds like I'm just getting more energy out of the drums when it's on. So I want to introduce all of that character and energy subtly. I don't want to, like, that is what I would consider like over compressed. I don't want to like really hear things. I just want to like feel the effect of things. So we're kind of gonna go through this. The first thing I want to attack is this bass. We've talked about this in just about every one of my sprint mixes. I never seem to leave myself enough time to wrangle in this bass. So let's talk about that. Another trick that I like to do is compression in series. So I don't like to try to accomplish everything all at once with one compressor. I'll combine two different forms of squeeze. So on my bass, sometimes I typically like a limiter in front of it. And this way I can just kind of take away like the big notes. They just kind of start shaving them off a little bit. So this way my compressor doesn't react massively to it. So then I can kind of try to get a smoother range of my compression, so it's not overreacting sometimes and underreacting others. So that's what I'm going to try to accomplish with this limiter. I kind of try to find an average of where it's mostly hitting and then maybe shave some of it off. You can hear it kind of start distorting in a way there, so that's what I'm looking at. And sometimes I like that distortion a little bit of this sound, specifically on this limiter. Sometimes it gives me a little thing, especially on my bass, so I kind of dig that. I'm going to bring in this Distressor. So here's like an example of this. Has like some distortion characteristics. This is like a tube distortion, and distortion in a good way. Let's call it harmonic saturation. This kind of has sweetening in the, like a tube does, this kind of like a tape. So both kind of sound cool on bass. I'm going to start with this tube one. I kind of want, in this case, I do want a little bit of faster attack because I just want to be grabbing this bass. I want it to kind of just be a consistent performance. So if I wanted more finger, I would loosen this up, but I kind of want to start maybe around in this area. And same thing, I want it to stay in compression a little bit because again, I just want it, the bass will decay quick. I kind of want to try to extend that decay. Nice trick for your ears is you really want to try to level match it. You'll hear a bunch of people talk about level matching because I don't want to make decisions based on it just being louder. Louder will always sound better, so I want to try to level match this here. Some of that saturation is giving me some more of the stuff in the mids here. So you see I have this big boost. That's an example of like how I would be utilizing my tools in different ways. I don't need this big boost. I would maybe be trying to introduce some of this with harmonics. So and then like on this bus, something that I like to do is multi-band compression. So that's where I can just compress the low end. I can get rid of all these bands and I just want a really consistent low end. So I'm just, no, that's not what I want. That's what I want. Let's try that. I'm going to boost it a little bit here. And then I just basically want to just make sure it's riding on this line here. And let's listen to it with no compression now like it was, because you can really start to see like how dynamic it is. It's kind of all over the place. I have low end and I don't have low end. All of a sudden, it's coming out at me. So I'm just trying to control all of that. Cool, let's maybe try this DBX 160 on this guy here. Kind of give me a little more splat on that bottom bottom snares, which is kind of like my high end on my snare. Especially with these cymbals, I don't want to crank my high end on my top mic because when that gate opens up, I don't want my hi-hats exploding. So I'm really trying to utilize getting more of that sound from my bottom snare mic. Like this Xynor limiter on my overheads, we're going to try it in here. And a little goes a long way, especially on this one. Let's try to solo this up here. Kind of gives me a little more splat on the snare drum, make sure it's staying here instead of like poking out sometimes. So then I just get a more consistent level. I can bring my overheads up. And sometimes it also gives me this feeling of my hi-hats dancing in and out. Because like when that snare drum's like clamping down, all of a sudden as it opens back up, my hi-hats. So it kind of gives me this motion too, this movement. Super subtle, but I dig it. Let's go. So this is where I'm going to start doing some parallel compression. Like I said, I kind of dug it when we were getting a faster attack and getting this like explosiveness on the back end. So I'm going to try that on this here. Sure, we'll leave it there. This is another example of where I'm going to use some of these tools. Your low end, just like on our mix bus, your low end is going to make compressors react a lot more than anything else. So this button here can filter out some of the low end, roll off the low end, so I can get a more even compression and where my kick drum isn't blasting it. Also, it helps me just let my low end pass through and still be big and full and not as much. Now we can also try some distortion. Let's try some tape. It's like putting some tape on there. I do want to link these. This would be because it's a stereo setting. There we go. This is just like linking the two. Let's see what we can get going here. So yeah, this is like my excitement slider now. Like that gets pretty awesome pretty fast. So I'm just gonna blend this in, maybe slow this down a little bit. Now what I would do is typically I would just bring this all the way down, and I've got faders in front of me. I can like close my eyes because I don't want to be influenced by like where it's landing, but I just close my eyes and I just like slowly blend it in, and just until I get like what I'm looking for. I like it around there. That's cool. Drop my little pad here. But I'm going to pull this in and out so you can kind of hear what it's doing. It's kind of giving me some splat, some more impact. I dig it. And I would do multiple versions of like parallel, you know, maybe something with a much more open attack where if I need more punch, I can just like allow the transient through and just blend that in, so I'm getting more transient. Let's see, like on my snare drum, I might do a parallel thing if I want more. That's awesome. It's I love that compressor. helps bring out those ghost notes a lot. It's pretty sick. And like, let's look at the difference here. If I just did this compression on the channel, let's get rid of this, back to parallel. What I love about the difference here is I still have my punch, my attack, like the snare drum is still hitting me here, and then I'm bringing up everything I love about that compressor as well, but I still maintain my punch. Listen to the punch go away when I just do it on the channel. But I love the distortion. I love what it's doing when it's just like spreading that sound, just so I want all of that, but I still want my punch. I still like how the snare was sounding before we did that. So it's great. Let's talk about these toms here. I like this Fairchild, and the other thing you can do is like all these compressors have great presets, so I might start with the preset and tweak from there, because it's just super helpful to see what they're doing, you know. And I already know this is going to be way too much, so let's just try this. And again, I can see that they're doing this in parallel. I don't like that. I'm just going to go full wet. And my idea on this is I'm just trying to even out the toms living in the same place. Some people call it like glue things together and everything else like that. That's fine. I just trying to marry the two. And on this one, I'm not doing it in parallel. I am doing it directly on. I'm only taking one off. I'm really just trying to, again, even out the performance here. Same thing on this. I like the Fairchild. It's just kind of this like gooey, squishy thing that I dig, and just again helps me get somewhere. Take it out of parallel. Let's begin. Can start hearing it grab too much. And again, it's less about what the meters are doing and more about like what I'm hearing. So I don't want to hear it kind of pulling away from me. That's what I'm looking out for. And that's especially how, you know, we make the mistakes of like over compressing our mix and making our mix feel small, is when things start pulling away or I'm hearing the effect of that. I really want to be cognizant of listening for that. So I'll back this off. I don't need it in compression all the time. Remember, I'm utilizing this to try to smooth out my dynamic range, not completely get rid of it. Again, on that, I'm just really looking out for just squeeze when it's a note that pops out or something. And it can also, because of the attack time, it can also let some of that through, so it kind of pokes through a little bit more. But really, I'm just trying to squeeze and give me just a little more consistency out of that thing. So I can set my fader, especially in this live scenario, on this live broadcast, I can set my fader and not need to be running to it every single time it jumps out. and be worried about that. Really, when I'm like live, I'm really worried about my vocal. So a lot of my hand is always on my vocal and my vocal effects and writing that. So I'd love everything else to be as consistent as possible. And then I use these VCAs to be like, okay, it's a lower moment. I'm going to pull my keys or pull my drums down a little bit, push my keys a little bit or whatever. But these are just like help me give faster control for that. So one hand can stay on my vocal and then the other hand can be worried about my general levels with my VCAs. So let's talk about mix bus compression now. Again, remember, the slower my attack, the faster my release, the more invisible the compression is. So on this, I really don't want this needle to be moving hardly at all. I'm going to be compressing heavier on the channels and either not at all here, or as I move down the line or to my buses or anything else, it's going to be less and less and less compression. So by the time I get to my mix bus, I shouldn't have any surprises with my dynamics at that point. I should have all of it pretty evened out, and or at least some protections, so it's just like if it very worst case scenario, all of a sudden a sound comes out of nowhere, it's grabbing somewhere else. I don't want it grabbing on this, because like I said, when I can feel it pulling and everything else like that, when it's on the mix bus, that's going to exacerbate my problem. If I feel my mix bus pulling and clamping, A, I'm going to be getting a smaller mix, and B, it's going to be clamping my entire mix down. So sometimes my kick drum can be like grabbing and all of a sudden my mix is like doing this, and we really don't want that. So this is barely going to be moving, and it's either a fully open attack or I'm just going to be shaving a couple of transients off. Usually on my mix bus, I have it fully open. In my broadcast scenario, again, because my dynamics are live and I can't automate, I'm basically writing my faders, I do like shaving a little bit more transient off here, and maybe I'll do another compressor that's wide open or something to help just give me stages of compression, because again, I'm not trying to do to muscle my mix into place all with one plugin or one compressor or one thing. It's all of these things added up together. So let's see how we're looking on our mix bus here. This is perfect. It's dancing. I'm getting consistency, right? And it's just dancing on my kick and my snare. And that's exactly what I want. And nothing is like surprising it, and it's barely moving. It's what I'm looking for. Subtlety is everything on this mix bus. It's the same thing with like my EQ, it's like this is a dB and a half, this is 3, and we talked about that. This is literally, this would normally be floating around 1.5, but it's 3 just because the translation to the encoding to YouTube. I do boost it a lot. My high end, I try to crank a lot more just because I'm not getting it to translate on YouTube, and that's just something I've observed over doing 1,000 broadcast mix now, and then going back and comparing it. So other than that, though, I'm trying to be very subtle on my mix bus. So we're going to talk about vocals on a different day, because that is, I just need more time to be able to talk about that. So our next video, we'll start talking about, getting these vocals wrangled and everything else like that. But let's add maybe another parallel compression channel here. And we're going to do this one different. Let's talk about, maybe I want this. Yeah. So that's what that one sounds like. That's where I'm going to get a little more of my punch kick is what I'm looking for there, and then I'll just like blend that in. Typically on this one, let's see if we can't do it quick. Typically on this one, I will do like a totally different bus. Let's call this my kick slash snare bus. And then I would just send my kick and my snare there. Why I only send my kick and my snare there is because I'm not trying to bring more cymbals in, so I don't need my overheads going there. I'm really trying to control that, and really I want the most punch out of my kick and my snare. Like if I'm talking about my hierarchy of sounds, it's like my vocal, and then it's like my kick, my snare, my bass, stuff that's like really coming down my mono channel. Like that's where I'm going to get my impact and my hit. So but I don't want more cymbals because I got plenty of that. Plus this overhead fader is basically a cymbals fader. If I want more cymbals, I'll just go to my overhead. So I'm trying to be careful about how I'm processing my parallel channel. But anyways, that's a start of taking a look at compression. If you guys got any questions, let me know, and we'll be back.